Hello and welcome to my tutorial on how to do intermediate CSS. Now before watching this tutorial I recommend that you go over basic and intermediate HTML tutorials and basic CSS tutorials. Now I have links to those three videos in the description and they're to my tutorials I've already done. So make sure you watch them before this tutorial, as I'm going to assume you already know those three the knowledge from those three videos. So in intermediate CSS, I'm going to cover basically properties on marquees, which I've covered back in basic HTML. I'm going to cover more about colors, so two different new ways to do them. And yeah, so just a few new things and a few more, harder parts of stuff we've already covered. So let's get on to marquees properties. Okay, so the first marquee property we're going to cover is speed. Now, to do speed with marquees, we're going to need an attribute called scroll amount. So let's just go ahead first and create our marquee. Okay. Alright, and just add in some content to finish off the main bits of it. Alright, okay, so now we have our marquee into place, so let's add our attribute. So, the attribute we're going to use is not called speed, but what's called scroll amount. So it's basically scrolling an amount, so that's where it gets its name from, okay? Now, usually you see attributes show up as red. Now, not all of them do, but they still do work. So scroll amount is one of them. Okay, now, so the next thing we're going to need to add is a value, as you may know. Now, I'll be using pixels because it's usually for some reason a bit slower in an equivalent in points or EM or percentage. So pixels is the most common, so I'd recommend you just stick with pixels when referring to scroll amount, speeds. Now, the default speed for a marquee is 6. So say if we wanted it to go faster, we're going to say I want to throw in 10 pixels. So before we save and run it, I'm just going to add another marquee with just as it is, so you actually get to see the comparison. Okay, so I'll just say text that's scrolling. Okay, so it's saved up there, no asterisks, as we may all know. So let's go ahead and run it. So I'm going to run it in Chrome. Okay, so the top one there is the ordinary one, and there's our new one, the scrolling text. Okay, so the default speed, faster speed. So that's the basics on a scroll amount. Now I'm going to cover another one, which is based on direction. So what I want to do is I am going to put in a direction attribute, and so in this case we're going to go for up, down, left, or right. Now, if I threw in left, what's going to happen is when we just refresh it just to see something new, so it's now refreshed, as you can see, there's no change. It's still coming from the right hand side of the page, but that's because left is the default setting. So if we go back to Notepad++ there, I'm going to change it something like right. Okay. Alright, so let's just go back to it. So there we go, it's showing up on the right. Now, with some statements that usually you might separate some of them, like say when you were doing inline CSS, you might do like say color red, pixels 16, or font size 16. Usually those will be separated by semicolons. Now you can't really do that with direction or any marquee attributes really. So as you can see, I have a semicolon right here. I'm going to save that. Now you will notice something. Okay, I'm going to refresh it. It's coming from the same side, so from the left, from the right. So therefore, just do not have any semicolons at the very end of your of your code. So that's how to change the direction. And I'm going to show you one more value. So it's going to be down this time. Okay, and okay, there we go. So as you can see, it was going up and sorry, not up. It was going down. So that's the basics. And then there is. I'm going to show you the final type, which is going to be behavior. Now for this, I'm going to use a left or right one. I'm just going to use right. Shoot, I hate it when that happens. Okay, so we're going to choose right, and we're going to go ahead and do and we're going to type in behavior. So behavior. Okay, and then the value. Now there's 3 different values you can have. You can have slide, scroll, or alternate. Now the first one, slide. What's going to happen with slide is it's basically it's going to scroll across like usual. Now not only is it just now it's going to start off, but it's just going to appear like it's just moving across. When it comes to the other side, it stops. So that's what slide does. So if you say direction right, it's going to enter from the left and stop at the right. If you say direction left, come from the left, stop at the other side. So whatever side it comes into from, it's going to stop on that other side. The other one is scroll. So let's go ahead and see the results on that. So as you can see, it's going right across. Okay, so it is going to be different to the slide behavior. So when it does go all the way across, it comes back on the other side. So that's kind of the default behavior setting. Okay, so slide, it enters from one side, stops at the other. Scroll, it starts on one side, goes straight to the other side, and just goes on and on and on. And there's one final one. So we're going to change scroll to alternate. Alright, and then refresh the page. So now this is an interesting one because not only is it going to sort of enter from one side. Now this should work. Yeah, okay, and it's now going back the other way. So alternate is basically going to alternate directions when it hits an edge. So just for a quick overview, that the scroll amount is going to be sort of change the speed, the values in pixels. Then direction is going to change if it's going up, down, left, or right, with a value of either up, down, left, or right. And then the behavior is going to be such as is it going to just go enter from one side, stop at the other, known as sliding, or is it going to enter from one side and continue going on and on, scrolling, or is it going to go back and forth between the two sides, alternating? So just practice away at the marquee behaviors and you'll just get good at them. So let's move on to colors. Okay, so the next bit we're going to cover is, as I said, is color. So what we're going to do is, just to make it a bit easier for actually being able to tell, the color is, I'm just going to show in a paragraph. Okay, so something random. This is a paragraph. Well, not too random. Just something plain. Anyway, so this is a paragraph. Is our paragraph. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use some internal CSS just to do this. So we're going to take our paragraph and give it the property. So first of all, it's a color. So we're going to need to state color. So in basic CSS, I covered the fact that you could say color by saying blue, green, red, so on, so on. Now, this next way is a pretty interesting way. In fact, it doesn't actually say words by name, but rather by number. Now, it's pretty weird to say colors by number, but you can just do them in CSS. Now, if you've heard about the way TVs work, which is like where there's all these pixels, and say that there's a blue pixel, red pixel, and green pixel, and they either fully light up or partially light up, just to make the different colors show. It's kind of the same thing going on here. So the first one we're going to do is what's called RGB. Okay, so RGB. red, green, blue. And basically we're going to use a system of like controlling the color that we see with red, green, blue. So RGB and two brackets, which is going to contain the numbers, and then semicolon, as we may know, to finish off our CSS statement. So first of all, within the brackets there's going to be three numbers. Now for the while I'm just going to leave them as like so. I'll actually just to differ out them a bit, I'm just going to give them each different values. Okay, so in this case we have 0, 1, 2. Now the reason why we need to have three numbers is, as you may guess, is because we have three letters beforehand standing for red, green, blue. The first number in this case is 0. We'll say that there's going to be no red value. So then we're going to then state the value for green, which is going to be a comma, so we're going to need to separate values but with commas. The second value is the value for green, and then number 2 is the value for blue. So the first number is going to be the value for or, red. Second value is going to be the value for G, green. And the third value is going to be the value for blue, or B, blue. So that's the basics behind that. So I'm just going to make them into more better colors. So don't forget, you'll have three numbers, each separated by commas. So I'm going to throw down 120, 30, and say literally a random number, 75. Okay, so save that, and we are going to run our code, and that didn't work. Okay, yeah. And I just realized one thing why that didn't work is I forgot to do my style tags. Sorry about that, so don't forget to do the style tags. Okay, so now that we've inserted our style tags, but since I realized I forgot that, so sorry about that. So make sure you have your style tags, or else obviously, as you may know, our internal CSS will not work. So P for paragraph, open bracket, color, then colon, RGB for our color, for our RGB colors, and then 120, 30, and 75. 120 for red, 30 for green, 75 for blue. Okay, so we're going to run that now. Okay, now as you can see, it looks a teensy bit purple. You may not be able to tell, so I'll just give it a different value, since I was not because you're not really too sure about what these numbers will produce. So I'm gonna just put down a low red value, a bit of fairly bright green value, so 240, and I'll say 60. Now you are limited to the numbers you can actually go to. Now of course you can obviously start from 0, but the highest number these values can go up to is 255. So if you put in 256, it won't work. So the highest value you can go up to is 255. Okay, so we'll save that, and we'll run it again. So now we have a more noticeable thing. So this time it's a good looking proper color. So that's how RGB works. Now as well, you can also have a fourth value, and this will range from 0 to 100, and this will be the opacity. So say 50, and just run it. Okay, that didn't work. I don't know why, but basically that it would usually just a fourth value would do the opacity. Okay, so that's RGB. So RGB brackets. You can have three values separate. You have to have three values separated by commas. Each one, depicting red, green, or blue. And you can also have a fourth value, which is usually the opacity. So that's on RGB. Now there's one final one I want to cover, and it's what's called hex. Now the hex values are denoted by a hash sign or the pound sign, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so it's like the number sign symbol as well. So with hex now, we're going to have a couple of different ways. We're just going to have literally all the numbers plus a couple of letters. So I'm going to throw down three random numbers, then a letter, and then two more numbers. So hex here is made up of numbers and letters. The letters being A, B, C, D, E, and F. So I'm going to save that. Okay. and yeah, it's only a little change, so just like RGB you can't really tell, so I am just going to change it to a different hex value, say H2BF3E. Again, it's unpredictable to say what the color will choose, and again a noticeable color. So basically now that's basically it. So RGB, 3 values within brackets, red, green, blue, and a fourth value for opacity. You then can also have hex, which is simply the pound sign followed by 6 characters, and they could be numbers or even one of the 6 letters A, B, C, D, or F. And that's basically it. So as you may know, you can't really predict the value of the color until you actually run the code. So that's basically that. Now there is 2 good websites that you can actually use to actually find good colors, and that is RGB Tools and colorcodehex.com/htmlcolorpicker.com or .html. So those 2 websites, and I'll leave links in the description for those. Yeah, so you can check those out, and they can help you with getting your color code values for hex and RGB. Okay, so now we know how to do marquee properties and colors. We're now going to move on to comments. Now, in intermediate HTML, I showed you how to do HTML comments, which was simply something like so, where it was like open tag, exclamation mark, dash dash, and then say random stuff, and then dash dash, close a tag. So that's what I covered about comments in my intermediate HTML tutorial, if you remember from watching it. So what I'm going to show you next is how to do a CSS comment. Now, just for these reasons, I am going to create an external CSS file. So I'm just going to create a new file, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this CSS content, just copy I'm going to cut that there, and just insert it into here. So that was Control X, then Control V, because cut and paste. Okay, and we don't need these style tags, but I'm just going to keep this character here so I can move in for the link tag. So if you remember from my basic CSS tutorial, this is So if you remember from my basic CSS tutorial, I covered how to link up HTML and CSS files. So link, then rel. So you should remember this stuff. So this stuff from that tutorial. Okay, and type as well. Text/CSS. Where are we going? Okay, and the usual href. So while we're here, let's think of a name. Well, you know what? I'm gonna go for something something somewhat related to what we're doing. We're doing intermediate CSS, intermediate I, and CSS C. So IC, and then style. So IC style. It sounds like you know. So let's not into any puns here. So IC style.css. So we have here our link tag. So let's go ahead and save our CSS file. Okay, save that, and yeah, so hopefully this is in the same file, because as you remember, if it's not in the same folder as the HTML file, it won't work. So we said IC style. Now we may as well check. I called it my website. I think I did, yeah, my website. So let's see if I put my website down, and there we go. Yeah, so it's definitely in here. So let's go ahead and do IC style.css. Okay, and there we go. Yep, so it's CSS now, the property is gray, and so on, so on. So let's go ahead and make sure both of them are saved. Now, as you may know, that if you left as it was, that it would work anyway, as in, nothing would really change. So as you may know, that doesn't change. So, as we all know, that what comments do is that they sort of make the code sort of appear visible to us, but doesn't affect the website in any way, unless we comment out the certain bits of code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the following. So this is a CSS comment where you do slash, so it's kind of like the backslash or whatever, then the asterisk, and then slash. Now, in order to get the asterisk, it's usually on its own around the keypad, or you can also press Shift 8. But if the asterisk comes up a different way for you, just do that. Yeah. So it's asterisk. So it's slash asterisk asterisk slash. Okay. Now, just for these reasons, I am going to comment out the. I'm going to comment out the property. So let's go ahead and run that. And refresh that. So obviously there we have the property not working, which is exactly what we were expecting to happen. So as you may know, we all know what happens with comments, but as you may know, there is a big difference between CSS and HTML comments. Okay, so just trying to remember the difference between the two, and understanding comments really shouldn't be obviously that hard. Okay, so the next thing we're going to move on to is background images. Now, if you remember from basic HTML, the way to insert images is by using the keyword img. But to do it with background images is somewhat different. Now, as I said, that we were going to start an external CSS file for the comments. So you know what? It's about a fair bit easier just to use the external CSS file for this as well. So let's go ahead and put in our body element, because what's going to happen is, because it's the background image for the entire web page, so you're going to choose body. And okay, so you choose body and go for the curly brackets to give it a property, and let's go ahead and insert the background image property name. Now, we've been saying it for a few times. The property is just called background image. Okay, just like that. So background image. Now, for just putting in a normal image, we would have an attribute called source. Now, this time it's actually different, because as you can see, we would just do the keyword as image and attribute as source. But in this case, it's actually a property. So how to sort of get the image we want is we'll have to put the following URL. And as you may know, that in a web browser, a URL is basically kind of the address bar. So google.com is the URL for Google, youtube.com is the URL for YouTube, stuff like that. So we're taking the URL in this case of our image. Now, the image's URL can either be sort of a path of folders on your computer, or its URL online. Now, I'm just going to use an image on my computer. Now, what's going to happen here is when you have URL, make sure you have a pair of brackets, sort of in the middle, sort of immediately after, kind of like the RGB code back in the colors part. So in the brackets then you're going to have quotations. So the quotations is basically going to be where we insert the code. So it's going to be URL, open bracket, open quotation. The URL will be typing, close quotation, close bracket, done. So I did have a look. So what I want to do there is I am just going to check to make sure I have an image in the documents. Okay. Okay, so here I have my documents. Yeah, so I'm going to choose this one here. So let's see, so computer pic, and it's a JPG, so obviously we need to know what type it is. So computer pic, a JPG, so let's go back to this. So it's called computer pic, so let's go ahead and insert that. So computer pic, and it was JPG, so JPG. We'll save that. So as you may know, it's saved. So let's go ahead and run this. Now I did have to do this just checking it. So here we are. So as you can see, this is simply the background image. So it's computer pic, and as you can see, it's working perfectly. Now the fact is that it's most likely going to be like, as you can see, where it's like one here, then one here. So it's going to be kind of going in patterns, kind of. Now, if you say say the image only to go across horizontally or even down vertically, you'll need to do what's called a repeat property. Now, to do this, what we're going to do is we will put in background dash repeat, and then what you can do is simply put in repeat again dash, and then it depends on which way you want it to go down. If you want it to go across, put in X, and let's go ahead and run that. Okay, so as you can see, there's nothing down here, but we have a line of them going horizontally up top. Now let's change that X to a Y, and then run that. So nothing over here. We have a line of them down here. Now, if you do get confused as to which is X and which is Y, so how do you know which one goes across and which one goes down? Well, if you know how to about graphing, about like sort of graphing, so the graphing topics in maths, you'll come across sort of the X and Y coordinates. Yeah, so that will, if you know how to do that, then you'll really understand which one is which. But this is just to go over just quickly. Repeat X puts them horizontally, repeat Y puts them down vertically. Okay, so as I said, if you understand graphing, knowing the difference between the two, it shouldn't be hard. For those of you who don't know graphing, X goes across, Y goes down. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic then. Okay, so now the final thing we're going to cover is text decoration and text align. Now, both of these pretty much mean what they actually are, as they're called. Text decoration allows us to decorate text or remove decoration, and text align allows us to align the text. So the first one we're going to cover is text decoration. Now, the best way to actually show the works of text decoration is by links, because as a default, there is text decoration given to links. So yeah, we're going to do our link first. So let's do our link, and it is going to go to Google. Okay, so obviously we need content as well, because obviously nothing to click on without it, and our closing tag. So that is therefore now our link. And to make sure it officially works, let's go on ahead, Google, and there it works, at least that. Okay, now it may be hard for you to see the underline, so what I want to do is I'm just going to get rid of that image. So into CSS, yeah, so it doesn't really matter about the image, as long as you already know the code anyway for it. Yeah, so now the image will be removed. Now let's go back over it and refresh, and there we go. Yep, so as you can see now directly there is the link is underlined, okay? And that's the default appearance. Now if we want to remove that underline, what we want to do is we'll simply need to give it a property. So just for easier ways of doing this, I'm going to use A, obviously, because that's the keyword for links, and I'm going to give it a property of text decoration. So decoration. Alright, and simply put in none, because I don't want any decoration for the text at all. Alright, and now refresh it, and now the text decoration goes. So that's basically how you can remove underlines. Now, links aren't the only forms of code that we can add or remove decoration from. I'm going to show you an example with paragraphs. So what I want to do now is I'm also going to give a text decoration property to the paragraph, and I want to give it a value of underline. Okay, and when we go back to our code there, as you can see perfectly, our paragraph is underlined. So that's the basics behind text decoration. So next, let's move on to text align now. Now, as I said, text align just allows you to align your element really up in either left, center, or right. So I'm going to choose the paragraph to align. So text dash align. Okay. Now, as you may know, there's 3 values. There's going to be left is the first. So let's go ahead and run that. Now as you can see, nothing happens, and that's because the value left is the default value, because you might guess that because everything usually always starts on the left, because these are on the left right now, they haven't changed, therefore left is the default value. So let's go ahead and change the value to something like, say, center. So center. Okay, go back to our web browser and refresh. So it's gone from here, but let's go over to the center, and there it is. So as you can see, that just by changing the value from left to center has completely changed its location, and therefore proves that the text align can work with a lot of these. So let's move on to the next value of right. Save that and go back to our web browser, and as you can see, this is in the center. Refresh, no longer there, and yes, if you go over to the right, there it is. So to just go over a quick detail, text decoration just decorates or removes the decoration from elements, and text align can just align our elements up on the left, center, or right. So at this stage, you should have a good understanding on marquee properties, color, comments in CSS, background images, and text decoration and text align. And that's all I'm going to be covering, really. So just practice away at the code, and just hope you get on well with it. Don't forget to leave a comment below to ask a question, or even to say if you liked the videos. Check out my other videos as well from my channel. So yeah, like my video, and thanks for watching.